If the New York Rangers don't end up turning their season around, which doesn't seem all that likely at this point with the way things have been going so far, with over a quarter of the way through the season now, it definitely seems like it would probably be a good idea for this Rangers team to look to sell off some pieces, and that could include trading away a superstar in Artemi Panarin. He has, of course, been the leading point producer for the New York Rangers each and every single season since he signed with the team back as a free agent once he left the Columbus Blue Jackets, but of course, this is a player who has not always performed the best in the playoffs, and with him being a pending UFA, potentially, being able to sign somewhere else, and the Rangers, of course, not wanting to maybe spend that kind of top dollar that he's possibly looking for, and it does also seem like, of course, that he is looking for a bit of a longer-term deal. The Rangers might not want to go that far, and ideally, the Rangers do turn this season around, and they can come to an agreement that does make sense for both sides, but at this point, it doesn't seem all that likely, and the Rangers are in a spot where even if they are, sneaking around and maybe pushing towards a wild card spot there come trade deadline time, it still might not be a bad idea to try and get back some assets. Maybe you can get back a decent young NHLer that can help you right now. You get back another first and a pick or two or a prospect, whatever on top of that possibly, and then you get back some good assets for the future, and you go into free agency with some cap space, or maybe then you look to use the extra first round pick you got from the Keandre Miller trade, and maybe you go out there and try and trade for some kind of superstar or star player that becomes available that's maybe an RFA or just is becoming available via trade. So there are options, but I think at the end of the day, if they can't come to an agreement, trading away Panarin is probably what's best. So let's kind of take a look at a bit of an update here from Frank Seravalli talking about this Panarin trade situation on the Open Ice Bleacher Report show. And I will have a link to the actual clip of him talking about this on the show in the description to it. It's on X, so you can check that out if you want to. But he basically went on to say about the Panarin situation, a lot will depend on where the Rangers are in the standings, but he thinks they've had problems, but have potential, and he does think they could possibly go on a bit of a run and maybe sneak into the top 3 in the Metro, which obviously is pretty interesting. I'm sure a lot of Rangers fans are going to disagree with him on that, and it's definitely, a little questionable. I'm not sure really whether or not they have it quite in them at this point there to sneak back into the top 3. Maybe they can somehow sneak into a wild card spot, and obviously I think a lot of that depends on the offense, because defensively, and especially now with Fox as well, I think that makes things even tougher. So I don't really think getting to the top 3 in the Metro, unless they somehow go on a run here, even with Foxy out, is really all that possible, because I'm sure those teams, especially with Foxy out now, Rangers are going to drop some games, and I'm not quite sure they're going to be able to hold on enough there to stay in the race for the top 3. Even a wild card's a little questionable at this point with him being out because of how important he is to this team. I would definitely say he's been the overall just best New York Rangers player so far this season. So to see him go out for minimum a month, it seems like pretty much. I mean, he's going to get reevaluated about around Christmas, I think they said. So obviously, things aren't looking too great on that side of things. We'll see how they play without him, but obviously it's going to be tough without arguably your best overall player so far this season. But Frank also did end up saying that he thinks if the Rangers are in a spot where they're not looking like they're going to make playoffs, they're well outside of the picture sort of thing, the Rangers are very likely to end up moving Panarin, which of course I think is kind of a no-brainer idea, but at the end of the day, Panarin does have that no movement clause, so it's kind of up to him. So if he is willing to move it, which maybe he actually is if the Rangers aren't in that spot, and if he is, I think that's ultimately the best thing probably for this team, even if they are kind of sneaking around the playoff kind of picture, like I said, sneaking around a wild card spot. As Frank Seravalli then goes on to say, Panarin wants a deal with term. He wants to be highly paid, and it's not that the Rangers are against paying him, but there are limitations for what Chris Drury would maybe be willing to go with on the kind of term side of things, as it does seem like he wants a long-term deal, and the Rangers, of course, probably want to go with a shorter-term deal. So ultimately, it seems like they're probably not going to come to a conclusion there, and are probably not going to end up, getting a deal done. It seems like the Rangers are probably looking to go, with a bit of a pay cut, maybe from what he's on right now, of course, with it more likely being like a 2 to 3 year deal, where it seems like maybe a guy like Panarin is looking for maybe even a bit of a raise, of course, as there have been a lot of guys signing some pretty massive deals with some pretty big cap hits, of course. he's on a deal with about $11.642 million cap hit currently. Maybe he wants a little more than that, where the Rangers want to pay him less. And if he's looking for a, not just kind of 2-3 year deal, but a 4, 5, 6 year deal maybe, which I think is kind of a little crazy if he wants upwards of especially 5, 6, but that's obviously a possibility because he's 34 years old currently. He'll be 35 at the beginning of next season, but he really might just be holding out for the absolute kind of most money possible. And it definitely could come down to a team being desperate enough to go out there and pay him that 5th or 6th year if they really want him that bad because of how weak this free agent class could be. I'm not saying it'd be a smart idea, but there just could be that possibility. And maybe it wouldn't be 6 years, maybe it's more like 4 or 5, but even that to me is not a scenario where I'd be willing to do that. I don't think that's an option. There have been other guys, of course, that have signed in their 40s. A guy like Chris Tanev, of course, did it with the Leafs. You've got a guy like Brad Marchand, of course, with the Florida Panthers. But I just don't quite think that's the best idea, of course, for the Rangers. And we'll see what happens, but that's kind of why I really do think at this point, trading him away, if you can get back some good assets, and maybe it could be a deal that kind of looks something like the Avalanche and Islanders deal from last season's deadline, where we saw Brock Nelson head over to the Avalanche alongside William Dufour from the Islanders for Callum Ritchie, a former first rounder, a good quality prospect, Oliver Shillington, more of just kind of a body, and then a conditional 2026 first and a conditional 2028 third. So with there not being a ton of great options, probably at this season's NHL trade deadline, but also in free agency, a lot of teams might want to go out there and maybe pick up a guy like Panarin now, where, yeah, you might have to give up some assets, but you get him for this playoff run, and you also, we're going to get to kind of talk to him a lot sooner, of course, than other teams are on possibly, signing him longer term as well. So that could be an option where some teams want to get in on him now. They give up the assets, which obviously could be a big thing for the Rangers, but getting back around a kind of first rounder and another kind of decent, good asset there, like about a first round pick in value, whether it is a former first round pick or a, really good high tier prospect and another low tier asset, or a, decent young NHLer plus a first. You never know. Obviously, it wouldn't be something crazy coming back. You're probably not getting of course, a good young top 6 forward or a good young top 4 caliber defenseman, but you probably can get back a first round pick and another quality asset plus maybe a little extra. So I think something like that can make a lot of sense. And at this point for the Rangers, instead of paying him a 4 or 5 year deal at a $11.5, $12 million cap hit even, I think I'd much rather see him get dealt away, get back some assets, and try and move forward with this team, where maybe you do keep kind of selling off a few pieces there, retool this team a little more, and try and shape it into it more of a cup contender, which I think there are a lot of great foundational pieces. You've got a great goalie. You've got a number 1 defenseman. Will Borgen's a great, second pairing guy. It seems like Gavrikov is an amazing partner for Foxy there as well. You've got Braden Schneider on the back end. You've got some decent prospects coming up there. I'll probably make a video talking about some more kind of underrated ones who don't get talked about enough in a couple days or a week or so maybe. But there are, some positives on this team on the forward side of things. A lot more kind of question marks, I think, but this team going forward is in an all right spot, not a great spot, but they got the extra first rounder. They picked up that second in the trade from the K'Andre Miller deal. They have some decent assets, some good future stuff. So it's not all bad, but it definitely is not all good by any means. And a few of the teams that I think could possibly make a bit of sense to potentially trade for Panarin are teams like the Anaheim Ducks, Carolina Hurricanes, maybe the Detroit Red Wings, maybe a team like Utah or the Bruins maybe, or possibly the Wild, I guess, if they could make things work cap-wise. But ultimately, I think the most realistic spots are like the Ducks, maybe a Carolina, and I do think a team like Detroit could make some real sense there, a team like Utah, maybe even the Bruins if they really want to go out there and buy. They're obviously doing pretty good this season. I don't think they should be in a buying spot necessarily, but you never know what they do. I mean, Sweeney, their general manager, I definitely wouldn't say is the best, so he might go out there and make some kind of crazy move and maybe want to sign a guy like Panarin long term, or at least for kind of medium term. Then you've got teams like Utah. Maybe they want to make a big splash there. They can probably make some things work there cap wise, of course, long term. And a team like the Red Wings, they've got Patrick Kane. They've got some cap space. They're not off to a great start. Maybe they want to try and get things going there, make a big move, and acquire a guy like Panarin. So there definitely are some options. teams that have the cap space available or could at least make things work cap-wise. Ultimately, though, it does, of course, come down to Panarin and whether or not he wants to waive his no movement clause. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button, as it does help the channel out a ton, and I would really appreciate it. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. Do you want to see the Rangers trade away Artemi Panarin? Do you want to see him get re-signed there and sign an extension? Which team do you think makes the most sense for him to get traded to? I'll catch you next one, and bye.